All right. So, okay, so here we go. This is Emmett Leadership Academy. This is the Leadership Masterclass. And our focus today is leading when vulnerable. Leading when vulnerable. The inspiration for this session is what we all know. Some of you would have seen the some of the emails that were sent out following your registration, you know, as reminders. And the email essentially had that picture of Will Smith slapping Chris Rock. And there have been a lot of discussions about, you know, what transpired there. You know, people have said a lot of things, but the reality is that it was a classical case of vulnerability on the part of those who should set examples, those who should be leaders. And so I thought to myself, okay, this is drawing attention to a very important issue, an issue that many people do not pay enough attention to. The kind of thing that we saw, that show of shame, as it were, is something that happens. It happens, it has truncated the careers of many leaders. And it happens, it looks spontaneous. And you would wonder how come this fellow got himself in that kind of situation? How come he couldn't control himself? How come, you know? And we tend to analyze all these developments. You know, one of the things we forget is that the guy was just vulnerable. The guy was provoked in one of his areas of vulnerability. And I'm sure he would have surprised themselves, probably thinking about it, you know, maybe even seconds after. He must have wondered, I mean, how did I get to that point? And it has huge consequences, as we can begin to see already. He's feeling the pinch already. In fact, to say the pinch is to put it lightly. You know, he's feeling the heat of it because his reputation is down, because, you know, even his finances are affected, you know, his opportunities are being compromised. You know, there are people who are, you know, companies, partners who are already reacted, you know, and what are they saying? We can't continue to be associated with these kinds of behavior. Those were things he didn't think about. He didn't think that he could get himself in that kind of situation. I bet that many of us on the platform today, you can almost swear that, you know, you couldn't have done what he did. But just before you do that, I'm going to ask you to pause and think, you know, about it. Yours may not be a case of slapping. Yours may be a case of something else. The truth is, if you've ever been provoked, you know, at your place of vulnerability, except you have been preparing yourself ahead of such situations, you cannot beat your chest to say that you can rise above it. I have seen it, you know, over 30 years plus of experience, again and again, and I've been in situations like that. And I thought, this is something to speak about. This is something to speak to leaders about. And as you would see from some of the things I'll be sharing, it's very profound. It's very, very profound. Sorry, before I go on, I need to acknowledge one of my bosses who is on the platform. I see his name here, Dr. Suleiman Danusa. Dr. Danusa, you're welcome, sir. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
To have you join us, Dr. Danusa was my boss many years ago, at Springbank when I worked with him in the executive office.
It's a great pleasure to join you. Always the great quality that I've known. So I cannot but listen very attentively because I know I will learn a whole lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
As usual.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm humbled, sir. You're welcome, sir. All right, so giving honor to whom honor is due there. Like I said, I also salute a couple of those who have been at our programs, who have patronized us. Well, this is a free program, and we still thank those who have taken it upon themselves to, join us and hopefully to see what Emmet leadership is all about and what we are capable of doing. Okay, let's go on to the subject matter. Well, I have said I am the lead faculty at Emmet, and for this purpose, and particularly for this platform, and I presume that some of us may have, some need or the other, but I offer expert help to senior executives, business owners, and leaders to build the resilience required to deal with vulnerabilities and the vulnerable moments that undermine careers, that undermine hard-earned reputation. I see Demola Kimberla is also on the platform. They are the reputation managers. They know what we're talking about. And even undermine wealth. And if you ask me, this is an area that many executives need to take a look at and need to, seek coaching for and need to build, their resilience so that situations that are preventable, that are avoidable, do not undermine many years of hard work. Now, what's the vulnerability problem? Let's get in and, look at it. What's the vulnerability problem? I'm going to leave you with some very instructive statements, but they're the truth. If there is any message that you need to take away from this session, with all due respects, here, these submissions. Unless and until your vulnerabilities are tested, never claim to be a good or strong leader. Unless and until your vulnerabilities have been tested, don't claim, don't beat your chest. You may actually just be living on borrowed time, because when the test comes, if you can't rise above it, leaders tend to fall like a pack of cards. Your career progress and leadership status, please take note, your career progress or the progress of your career and leadership status, they are all at risk without building your capacity to stay on top of your game at vulnerable moments. One of the interesting things about moments of vulnerability is that they have nothing to do with your technical competence. You can be very competent technically, but those vulnerable areas can mess you up. You can't fault the acting, skills of Will Smith. You can't. I mean, he's been in the business for years. I remember many years ago. I mean, we've watched him, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He's done all manner. I mean, and he just won an Oscar, by the way, at this very same event where his reputation came crashing down, where he was tested like never before. Okay, so this is what he does. This is why vulnerability is important to the leader. So I need, as I encourage in all of our programs are focused on transformation, in which case you don't come and return the same way. If you are patient and if you pay attention, you must live with very clear action steps that you can begin to practice immediately we're done with this session, and begin to see results in whatever your endeavor is as a leader. So I want to encourage us to please take note, to please pay attention, to please look inwards, because it's not about anybody else. It's about you. What you gain is what you should use. And so please, let's focus on that. Let's focus on that. What does it mean to be vulnerable? When we talk about vulnerability, when we say someone is vulnerable, what does it mean? Just some, if you like, even dictionary definitions. It says someone who is often easily hurt or harmed, physically, mentally, emotionally, and open to attack, to harm, or to damage. All right? Or to damage. Take note. Second, one who is able to easily, physically or mentally get hurt, or be hurt, or influenced, or attacked. So let me ask you, please, let's do something on the chat. What are your areas of vulnerability? What are the things that could happen around you or to you that could put you in a difficult situation where you can lose control? Maybe slap somebody like Will Smith, maybe abuse somebody, maybe dress down somebody, maybe shout at somebody, maybe even, have some physical bodily reaction that will make you do something that moments after you begin to regret. Why did I have to react like that? Was that really necessary? What are some of those things? Can you think about that? Do you want to share that? Please share some of them in the chat. Let's hear from you. Let's begin to exchange ideas. All right. I see someone trying to cheat you, can make you, can agitate you, can make you want to react. I see betrayal. So if you are betrayed, you don't like it. Just like Judas betrayed Jesus. When someone I care about is hurt, you feel vulnerable. You want to feel for the person. Stealing my money or cheating me, I see there as well. Please, thank you for those who have expressed themselves. Let's see more. We're 35 more of your comments. And also for you who has expressed, you can think of as many things as possible. It's not one. I guarantee you that your area of vulnerability is not one. It's not one. There are more than one. So as many as you can remember, please tell us. Trying to outsmart me, road rage, attack on my family. I see that, yes, hypocrisy, a hypocrite, incidentally, we're going to be talking a bit about that. Talking down, shouting at me. Some people are vulnerable. They don't like it. You begin to shout at them, you make them nervous, or you make them want to shout back or react. Discrediting me. When you call my authenticity or my competence to question, I don't take it lightly. Great. When under threat, I like that. When I'm threatened by anything, a lack of integrity gets one of us, on the wrong side. Bullying, that's, hypocrite trying to oppress. When you are being accused of what is not true. Excellent, Ransel. You're welcome once again. I see you. You've mentioned something that I'm going to talk about clearly. Being accused, somebody is lying against you. Somebody's lying against you. Great. That's repeated by Chisom. So thank you very much. Please keep it coming. Now, so you see that now you are vulnerable. Okay. Now let's go to the next level. So what do you do? What if you are vulnerable? If they get you irritated, if somebody's trying to cheat you, if somebody is dealing with you as a hypocrite, making a demand of you something that they would not do, how do you react? How do you react? What does it make you do? So let's talk about, you've talked about, the vulnerability. Now let's talk about the reaction, because like I said before, Will Smith was vulnerable. There was a reason that he reacted. Somebody was making a joke of his wife's condition, So just like some of us said, an attack on my family would provoke me. It will make me vulnerable. Why? Because of the love I have for my family. That was what he did. So if meaning that for those who said an attack on my family, if somebody was joking about your family member in the same way that, Chris Rock was doing to Will Smith, the question is, what would you do? How do you react? So let's talk about it, because it is your reaction that creates a problem, either a problem, or it has a different reaction, and I'll come to the kind of reaction. So, I see, again, when oppressed or somebody is oppressed, where I am, when repeated lies against your character, I don't take being bossed around lightly. Somebody says that, stop pushing me around, stop bossing me around. I get I get possibly nervous or uneasy, when you do that, Okay, so the reaction now, I walk away to clear my head. That's one of the reactions. Let's talk about the reactions, because our discussion won't be complete if we don't talk about the reactions. So how do you react? How do you react? Someone says, I walk away with, to clear my head. So I don't, I don't react. I won't slap like a Will Smith, but, I just leave the place. Okay, I call the person to order. Wait a minute. I mean, I won't take that from you. I'm going to ask you, sir, to talk about that at some point. How you call the person to order because it becomes crucial. But I'll let you know, sir. Okay, I try to state the facts. So what I do is that, yes, if I get uneasy with the circumstance, I want to just lay the facts on the table. Okay, so if you lay the facts on the table, what happens thereafter? I see somebody says, well, all right, it depends, either fight or flight. For this purpose, Mr. Sulaiman, let's assume that your reaction and your response are the same for this purpose. We just use them interchangeably. Okay, I marinate in bitterness. I'd like some more. Can you please throw some light to that? I'm trying to, to understand that. I try to avoid such people and stay away from such people in the future. I like that response. I try to avoid that. So you are suggesting that you walk away as well. At least from that situation, you walk away, and in the future, you just don't want to, you avoid them because you don't want them to get you into the same kind of circumstance. All right. I see, Juliet, I confront politely. Again, I like that. So I take the mic from him and I straighten him out with polite word of rebuke. That's what you would have done, apparently, if you were in Will Smith's shoes. I try to keep to myself, so I withdraw. Okay, and I don't want somebody to provoke me to do what I wouldn't do. I will let the person know what he or she has done and the consequences of his or her action. Okay, so after you have done that, so what happens? Do you walk away? Do you stay there? Are you expecting the person to react? Do you try to resolve the issues? Okay, if the person is trying to be malicious, it may not be advisable to engage that person at that particular point in time. Okay, I I note that, okay, I hold it in, waiting for them to get what they deserve. I wish I understood that. Okay, you are perhaps, going to leave them to do the same thing to somebody else, and hopefully that person deals with them, and that's the way you would like to react. Okay, I withdraw from the person. All right, thank you. Please let the comments keep coming. Okay, so let's go on. Let's look at a few things that I'd like to state. One, that as a leader, you will surely be exposed to vulnerable moments in the execution of your assignment. You will surely, it is guaranteed, except you are not doing leadership actively, you will be exposed to vulnerable moments. And vulnerable moments are the greatest test of the quality and the strength of leadership. That's why I said initially, until you are tested, and tested not in the area of your technical competence, not with regard to your skills, but in the areas where you are vulnerable. Don't beat your chest that you're a good leader. And everyone will be tested. The challenge that comes, you will be challenged via your vulnerabilities to demonstrate whether you have the capacity to lead. Indeed, whether you truly have earned the right to lead. Notice there is the privilege given to lead, but there is also the right to lead. The privilege is easier to access. The right has to be earned. The right, when earned, empowers you to do leadership right, to be effective as a leader. However, it's tough to earn. For you to earn the right, you must demonstrate that you can ride your vulnerabilities, that you can stay on top of your game at your vulnerable moments. And so, leaders are weak when at those vulnerable moments, they fumble, they falter, they fail, and some even fall. That's evidence of weak leadership. Evidence of weak leadership. So in truth, you could look at a Will Smith. Is he a candidate for leadership? Is weak. Because at the moment of vulnerability, he felt like a pack of cards. And leaders are strong when they stand firm and strong and tall and in control at their vulnerable moments. So at those times where people really come after you and do things in order to provoke certain kinds of reactions, what happens to you? Do you stand tall? Are you able to rise above it? Or do you fall? Some women are so vulnerable when they face certain kinds of challenges. In some cases, you even utter one or two words, they start shedding tears, yet they are senior members of staff. They are vulnerable and they can't rise above it. Some men, it's not even what you have mentioned. Some of the things that make men vulnerable is the woman. Some men can't rise above temptation from the female folk in the office, in their areas of leadership. And I noticed that none of the men has said anything along that line. But one of the critical areas of vulnerability for men has to do with the opposite sex. And they tend to fall like a pack of cards. You wonder what's going on and why is it, but they are weak areas. It's a weak area. And like some people have said, I will walk away. But in some cases, some men can't walk away from the woman. They can't. Not because they don't have the ability, but because they have not developed the capacity. And in some cases, some don't want to. But as we have seen, those are things that undermine years of hard work. And you begin to wonder, what is it? I mean, why would a man do this just because of a woman? And suddenly he's lost his job, he's lost his respect, you know, and stuff like that. So now I'm not saying that's the only thing with, I've just used that as an example. And I don't want us, you know, to think that it's only a provocation like we saw in the case of Will Smith that can put you in a vulnerable situation. All right, so I see some other reactions. Thank you for those who continue to express themselves, you know, great. Okay, so yeah, I very much agree. You know, I see the note here, and let me speak to that very quickly. You know, I see here Dr. Ndanusa saying leaders and followers are mutual preconditions, and precisely the point is that both leaders and followers have vulnerabilities. Now, this is where the responsibility, first, let's be clear, the responsibility is more on leaders to rein in their vulnerabilities, because followers look up to leaders, and a leader, quite frankly, has not qualified to lead if you can't rein in your vulnerabilities. And therefore, one of the things that you are expected to do as a leader is to school and train the followership on how to rise above their vulnerabilities. Because the totality of leadership is about being in control. It's about being able to handle situations. And that doesn't mean that you won't get hurt, make no mistake. But that means that you can rise above the hurt. You know how to deal with it without betraying, all right, your responsibility for leadership. So everybody has vulnerabilities. The difference between leader and follower is that leader is more able to stay on top and in control at those vulnerable moments than the followers. The kind of vulnerable situations that will, you know, that will cause hurt or harm or embarrassment or ridicule for followers should not cause for leaders. Otherwise, you know, the leader is not yet, you know, qualified. That's why I said that and it isn't to suggest that the leader must be perfect. It is to say that one of the areas where leadership becomes a difficult assignment is that there are certain expectations. And part of it is that you are able to stay on top when challenges, you know, when in the face of challenges. A leader can be fearful in the face of a challenge as much as a follower will be fearful, even if the leader has never handled that challenge before. These are some of the demands, you know, of leadership. Thank you very much, sir, for bringing that up. Now, let me say this as well. Somewhere later, I try to differentiate between what I call the vulnerable moments and the teachable moments. And if I may just address that right away, one of the things that I want to draw attention to is the fact that the vulnerable moments are very important teachable moments that leaders must learn to use. What is a teachable moment? A teachable moment is a moment of encounter where that the leader is able to use to teach the followers. Nothing, is as good as using your experience, your encounter, as a way to show your followers the kinds of challenges that they can encounter and how to deal with them. And in some cases, whether you even, shine in those instances, or not, is not the issue. The issue is that if you falter, you can still use it as an opportunity to teach on what will happen, if you don't get your acts together. And if you shine, if you win, if you dominate your circumstances, you can use it also as a teachable, moment. But it's very important. This is how important the issue of vulnerability is. So, so the leader must work at actively to translate their ability to effectively handle their vulnerable moments in order to be successful. Because the quality of leadership is exposed by the outcomes of your vulnerable moments. And if you're a leader, be sure that people are watching you. And what are what's the nature of the outcomes? You have the outcome can be positive when you rise above the challenge to your vulnerability. A number of us have said, I will walk away. I would politely speak to the person involved, tell them what the problem is. None has yet has agreed that they can do some untoward things, but that's not a problem. I'm sure that you may, even if you don't agree, that's is something I guarantee that you can do. And maybe some of us can share some examples when you have done something and at your vulnerable moment and you regretted it. If you can do that, I will be grateful. At your vulnerable moments, can you share with us? And if somebody wants to speak out, please just raise your hand and you would have an opportunity to speak. Share with us a moment of vulnerability where you reacted and you were sorry for reacting in that manner, or you eventually paid a price, for reacting in that manner. It could be, just picture what happened to Will Smith. And I guess if we want to be truthful, we must have come across situations like that. And some of us are grappling with situations like that. Some people cannot control their anger. There are executives that can't control their anger. There are executives who still don't know how to speak in a measured fashion to their subordinates. When their subordinates provoke them, or when their subordinates goof or fall short in one area or the other, they tend to just let it off and they shout, and people can even hear them, from other areas. There are still today those who will do exactly what Will Smith did. There are today those who will do worse things than what Will Smith did. And some of them may have even joined to criticize Will Smith. The negative thing, Biola, I'm going to recognize you to speak briefly, shortly, so that I don't lose my line of thought. Let me just mention. So there is the positive side. Every vulnerable, situation, moment has a positive outcome, has an outcome, and the outcome could be positive or negative. What you don't want is a negative outcome. And that's what tends to happen. And the problem with the negative outcome is that you do something that you regret. You do something. Now you have to start issuing, some kind of apology. We saw the apology that Will Smith gave. And again, apologies don't solve the issue of vulnerability while we're at it. You don't become less vulnerable because you apologized. And many times you can see through the apology that it really doesn't address, all right. Can I ask that we watch our mics, please? Sorry, let me just check where we maybe have it. All right. Okay, so, yeah, if you said something and you later regret it, it's part of what we're saying. As long as you did something, you reacted in a particular manner, and subsequently you sat down wondering, why did I say what I said? And you are very uneasy. And the reason you would do that is because, you know that it can lead to something else, and you would rather, that it doesn't. You know that it can paint a different picture of who you believe or who you would like, people to think or to believe that you are. There is a consequences of your reaction that you are not comfortable with, because you understand that it could cost you. Okay, that's what I'm asking. So please share it again in the chat. So when the outcome is negative, when you're undermined or harmed or humbled or even defeated, by facing that kind of situation. All right, Biola, let's hear what you have to say. You have the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. It's just a few sentences about what I did. I did not even verbally interface with this person. And I wrote a litany of, because it's been a provocative thing, unknown to me, was already a stage planned thing to check whether I would fall into that. So I wrote a lot of text or WhatsApp message to this person. The person responded back with a lot of fights and arguments and loud voices and everything around me, but I didn't have the presence of mind to record it. I stayed silent for almost 30 or 35 minutes, but much later the next day, I wrote again another list of the things he said. All I was doing was digging my own grave, as it were, because then he has written documents that he can actually, you understand, showed, and those things were measured. They were long things. If I had done exactly the same thing he was doing, like have a conversation, not a written thing, or every time he's been doing that, I should have not waited until he came to a head before I reacted. So that showed a gap in my own vulnerability. I felt, oppressed, repressed and everything. But he knew what he was doing all along. He was piling up the measure, waiting for the time I will actually break. I guess he was actually waiting for me to break verbally. And I didn't do that. And I felt I was still on top of the game by writing a list. But immediately I did that, he told me that, I'm going to show everybody that. It was like, ta-da, that's a wonderful thing. Just giving me an emulation to bury you proper. And of course, I paid a huge price for that.
Thank you very much. So that's a good example. That was pretty classical. It was like somebody setting a trap for you, and you just fell into it. You were thinking that your response was appropriate, not knowing that it was something that was going to become evidence, that will work against you, and you knew that in the circumstance, if the person did, what he told you he was going to do, that it was simply going to work against you. And it was going to present you in a different light to others who matter in terms of decision making, maybe in your company or in a particular circumstance. All right, this is what Demola says, some of the reactions: unbridled anger, pride, arrogance, lack of empathy, poor basic leadership skills. These are some of the reasons that leaders are unable to surmount their vulnerable moments. Great. We would explore that, more of that. Now, some of your moments can be one of two things. They can be opportunistic or they can be defeating. They are opportunistic when you succumb to the vulnerability in the interest of the development of others. So one of the things I want to say is that the fact that you are vulnerable is not the problem, all right? Because in some cases, you need to come across as being vulnerable, all right? And let me use the point that Demola made just a bit, some moments ago, the lack of empathy. At times, empathy allows you, all right, to yield ground just because of others, okay? So it's an opportunity to demonstrate that you are human and that it's not about you, but it's about others. In some other cases, it's defeated, and that's the one that is a problem. So you see, in actual fact, you need to be able to know what kind of circumstance am I facing so that you know what the appropriate response should be. Is it one where my vulnerability needs to be expressed so that others see that I'm not the hard man that they thought I was? I'm not the unreasonable woman that they thought I was. Or is it one where I need to put my feet on the ground, okay, for certain purposes, because that's the right thing to do? So it can be a bit tricky identifying which is which. So look at your vulnerability, some of those things that you have identified as the cracks in your wall. And when you have cracks in your wall, you had better fix them before they become a problem. You better fix them, because someday they're going to give way. And as they say, when there is no crack in the wall, it's difficult, for the lizard or for any other hurtful animal to pass through it. The cracks in your wall, they're your vulnerable areas. They are not your lack of technical competence, of skills. It's your lack of ability to dominate your vulnerable moments. And so you can see some of the things that make people vulnerable. I'm going to run through it. I wish I could spend a lot of time, but maybe we would have some opportunity to do that, at a much later stage. When you're hungry, some people can't handle hunger. When you are powerful, it can be vulnerable. There's too much power. You know what they say? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Some people can't handle power. They're vulnerable. For some people, whenever you call the authority to question, they become vulnerable. They want to show you that they have the power. Unfortunately, they don't understand that it's a trap. Okay, let me go back and draw something out for you. And I'm sure a number of us may not, that may not sink in. When we looked at that definition of what being vulnerable means, there's something I want to draw your attention to. And I think that, you will be more careful going forward. You will take this thing more seriously going forward. Look at what it says here. It says, you are vulnerable if you are often easily hurt or harmed, physically, mentally, or emotionally, and open to what? Attack. And open to attack. What does that mean? That means, ladies and gentlemen, that those situations that you talked about, they are deliberate most of the times. They are deliberate. They are targeted to humble you to hurt you, to harm you. And if you are in the corporate environment, they are targeted to undermine you in some way or the other. It can be by a colleague. It can be by your boss. It can be by a subordinate. They have observed you. They know your weak points, and they want to provoke certain kinds of reactions, knowing that when they can, if I can get you to react like Will Smith, if you are a senior person in the organization, I know that I've succeeded in showing you the way out. It's something that I can't do ordinarily, something that I don't have the power to do, but I can provoke you such that the management will have no other choice but to show you the door. But many of us don't think about it, from that perspective. All right. We don't think I think we're a bit on the naive side, thinking that maybe it's just a coincidence, that somebody decides to do that or something, not knowing that more times than not, especially in those kinds of environments, they are deliberate attempts. The more reason why a smart leader, a smart professional knows that I must do everything to develop my capacity to stay on top at my vulnerable moments. So notice, your authority can be a source of vulnerability. When you are too secure, it can be a source of vulnerability. When you are lustful, we talked about the women, it can be a source of vulnerability. And for some people, it's not just about women, it's certain types of women, okay? When you are weak, always sickly, it can be a vulnerable, a source. When you are attacked persistently, there's just this person that is always looking for your problem, for your trouble, it can be a source. When you confront a task that seems impossible, and there's so much expected from you, you can be vulnerable. When loss appears imminent, somebody talked about earlier on about threat. When you are faced with a threat of loss can be a source of vulnerability. When you are afraid, it can be a source of vulnerability. When you are ignorant, it can be a source of vulnerability. What it means is that somebody can take advantage of your ignorance. And I guarantee you also, as a leader, that happens a lot of times. It happens a lot of times. Leaders who don't pay attention to learning and knowledge acquisition, this is the kind of thing they expose themselves to. You can be hooked on tradition like the Pharisees, and you don't embrace innovation. Some are threatened. I have a colleague that is on the platform now, who shared at one of our sessions. I think it was our session on office politics, and had some issues. Okay. Because perhaps those you are dealing with cannot handle some of the tech developments of now. They can't handle the innovations. They can't handle the trends. They like to stay in the past. So when you bring ideas, when you bring ideas to them, they feel vulnerable. They feel inadequate. And one of the things they try to do is either try to put you down or try to put your idea down by hook or by crook. And some of us on the platform may also be suffering from something like that. We may be suffering from something like that. When you are subject to ridicule, that's what happened to Will Smith. You are suddenly, the object of, of a joke. And now you are thinking that joke was too costly. All right? Because as we said, it was an attack on your wife, on your precious dear wife. Okay? When you are falsely accused, you can see that has come up from our discussion. When you are betrayed, it has come up from our discussion. When you are criticized, some people can't handle criticism. Once they express their views and there is a contrary view, they begin to get jittery. And some can't handle it well, especially when it looks like it's coming from somebody they believe they're better than, and for some is disrespect. They feel that, when they are disrespected, they don't, when you are out of your mind, not in the right frame of mind, you can be vulnerable. When you are overwhelmed with a situation, you can be vulnerable. When you are puffed up, pride is one of the things that Demola mentioned. You're puffed up, and a lot of things can put you in that situation. When your position is threatened, you can be vulnerable. I don't know whether any one of us can relate to that. When your efforts or your results are unappreciated, it's like, what more am I going to do, that will make this my boss just appreciate somebody? I mean, I'm just, you do this, it doesn't see it. You do that, it doesn't see it. Your efforts are not being rewarded. Even when you make one or two, those are situations that can make you vulnerable. When you are sorrowful, tempted, or agitated. All right, those are. Permit me to skip these vulnerable moments. I've made some remarks on that, but I want to get to something very quickly. The 7 failures, so that I deliver what was advertised. What are the reasons that we falter and fall at our vulnerable moments? I'll give 7 distinct reasons. Again, please, you should be asking yourself questions as we're going through. What are the reasons that you, even before we look at it, can you share them in the chat? What are the reasons, why you're unable to deal satisfactorily with your vulnerable moments? First is that we tend to overrate ourselves. And if you ask people, I think you need to develop yourself. I think you need to, take some coaching or what have you. They're unlikely to agree with you until something like that happens. By the way, Will Smith now had to check into a very expensive, a luxury resort or something for purposes of going to deal with his vulnerability. He would have avoided that, all right, if he had identified it long before and if he had worked on it. He wouldn't need to do what he's doing now. And that's what some of us really need to think about. That's what some of us really need to think about. All right, so you see, yes, overconfidence is one of it. Chisom says, I don't take the time to fully internalize and question the words of the other party. Thank you very much. I like the point by Mr. Shego Latunji, maybe it's Dr. Pardon me, inferiority complex. You just feel that you don't have what it takes. You feel that the person, is better than you. All right, so that's the opposite. For some of us, please keep them coming. For some of us, we tend to overrate ourselves. We just believe that we have the ability to handle vulnerable moments. Well, in fact, we lack the capacity. So in some cases, the ability might be there, but the capacity to rise up when it actually takes place, will be found wanting. The second issue is ignorance. At times, we're just completely ignorant of the dimensions of our vulnerability, in which case, there are things that happen, there are situations that take place, and they catch us unawares because we never knew that we could be that vulnerable. We didn't know. And that's because we don't know ourselves enough to be able to say, this is what gets to me, this is what does not get to me. That's why I was provoking your thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, earlier on, that even though a lot of us were listing just one area of vulnerability, I guarantee you to sit down and ask yourself questions. You will run a list. It will scare you. Now, if you haven't done that exercise and all you are listing is one, you also need you need an exercise to assess your vulnerability. All right, you probably need a call with me or something, and let's walk through it. And you'll be surprised what you discover. You'll be surprised, because as long as you don't know that it is there, when it happens, and it will happen because some people would observe it, and as I've said, they're going to try you. When it happens, you'll find that you won't have the capacity to handle it. Lack of awareness, correct? And knowledge of self, you're right. You're right, Daryl, you're right. So that's very important. Very important. How much of yourself do you know? I've had this discussion, and I think I can mention that Biola is one of my accomplices in that regard, where we talk about, a lot of people are bothered about their purpose. Simon Sinek will say, start with your why. And I always grapple with that, because I don't think, why is the starting point. I think who is the starting point. And I argue that when you know who, why becomes given. Why? I mean, if I know that this seed is an orange seed, I'm not going to be expecting to produce mango from it. I'll be stupid. I know what an orange seed, the purpose of an orange seed is to produce oranges. Okay, so why am I looking for why? And the truth is, wherever you are, you can always find a why to justify. But you can only fully apply yourself when you know who. And that includes, staying on top of your vulnerabilities. And remember what we said, your vulnerabilities are going to be tried. So in that pursuit of purpose, when the vulnerability challenges arise, the person will fall like a pack of cards. Why? Because you have not understood who you are. So that ignorance in that particular dimension, not in terms of your technical competence, will be that factor that can undermine, that it tends to undermine a lot. Carelessness is also another issue. A careless attitude towards your vulnerabilities. Some of these situations happen because they didn't happen on the stage where, like Will Smith, where an Oscar is being presented, we don't pay attention to them. And perhaps in the case of Will Smith, there have been occasions in the past where the same thing has happened, but they are not, it didn't happen on the world stage. All right, it didn't happen on the world stage. But look at what transpired. Look at what transpired when the same thing now repeated itself. And then maybe, it became very costly. So if you look at your situation, have you also been careless? Are there things that have happened that you've overlooked them or you've forgotten them? One day, one circumstance will be different from that one, and it can cost you everything that you have worked for years. It can puncture your reputation. Carelessness, indiscipline is another. Some just generally live a life of indiscipline. Neglect is another. Leaders tend to neglect the issues of priority. There's a program we have at MS that is titled the weightier matters of leadership, to show that there is a specific priority for the leadership assignment. When you mix it up, you expose yourself to vulnerabilities. That's part of what we're talking about here. If you are interested in it, just send us a mail and we will make that available. And then, of course, you have capacity, just simply lacking the capacity. Even though you know that you are weak in some areas, have you worked on it? Maybe it's a good time to ask, please, for some of the areas where you have listed, particularly those situations, where you have acted in a manner that you later regretted because it wasn't the right approach or the right reaction for that particular vulnerable moment. Have you thought, what have you done about it? What have you done about it? I mean, Biola shared her example. Biola, what have you done about it? What steps have you taken, to address it? Are you aware that they're going to happen again? That situation is going to happen again? And I will show you one or two things. These things happen. All right. So you can share, please, or, if you want to say something, you have the opportunity. Let's look at 7 pillars, that you must be mindful of. I want to share the dynamics of how, vulnerabilities, your experience with vulnerability. 7 things to mind. If you ever want to have a chance of being able to stay on top of your game, at all times, what are they? The first, do you know the root cause of your vulnerable moments? Do you know those things that happen that make you vulnerable? Do you know all of them? I can talk about the Pareto principle here, but that's not immediately, that's probably for a bit of an advanced class. But do you know the root causes? There are always root causes. If you don't know, if you cannot identify the root causes, then the foundation already is shaky. The foundation already is shaky. You are vulnerable when you are in some critical need of what matters to you, either for your livelihood or for preservation of self-esteem. And that could include your desire to be respected, to be honored, to be favored, or to be relevant. These things are important. All right. There is a root cause of your vulnerabilities. And it's important. If you want to be able to deal with them, you must know them. What is it that gets you? What are they? Out of these things, what are the most important? All right. As it were, the 20% that account for 80% of why you tend to misbehave in certain tricky circumstances. There are always root causes. Number 1, pillar. Number 2, your identity. We talked about who you are. Do you know that the challenges that you have, that who you are, your attributes, they play a crucial role in the nature of your vulnerabilities. You know that there's a reason why you don't like to be cheated. You see it as, I don't like to be cheated. I don't like to be oppressed. I don't like when somebody is lying. So that's what you see. The truth is that the reason you don't like it is because there are certain attributes, your makeup, elements of your personality that make you like that. After all, not everybody reacts to that just like you. Some of the things that make you vulnerable are different from some of the things that will make me vulnerable. Why is that the case? Even if you think that the things that make you vulnerable should make me vulnerable, it doesn't happen. For the reason that except we share the same kinds of attributes, you and I may not see anything wrong. The things that threaten you may not threaten me. I may not even think about them twice. You know, there are many of us who can be in Will Smith's shoes, and we would never react like that. We won't even think about it. We would, in fact, laugh it off. Why do you think we will laugh it off? Because we understand that it's a joke? No, it is because there are attributes that we carry that define us. So those challenges will mean nothing to us. We need to drill down on this, but hopefully you would have the opportunity to. But I want you to take note of that. Things just don't happen to you because it's you. I mean, it's because of what defines you. Your attributes define you. You may even look at it as your character defines you. And that's something, that we often don't pay a lot of attention to. Do you know as well, this is number 3, that the challenges that trigger vulnerable moments in your life, do you know those challenges? Do you know those challenges? Do you know those circumstances? One thing is the root cause. The other is yourself, your identity. The other is what challenge provokes that root cause. This is like saying, what is that attack trying to get at? All right. So I know that you are very emotional. I know that you could cry at the slightest thing. So what do you think I would do? What challenge do you think I will bring against you? I'm going to say something that will make you cry. That's the challenge. It's different from the root cause. Okay? The root cause is, what is it that you're afraid of? What is it that can embarrass you? What is it that makes you jittery, that makes you vulnerable? Now I'm saying that you are vulnerable to those things because of who you are. And then I'm saying, because some people know those root causes, in case, and you may not even know it, they will appeal, they will bring challenges to you that will appeal to the root causes. Because when they do that, that's when they can get you off your feet. That's number 3. In every situation, you will find these 7 elements. Number 4, do you know that your knowledge of principles is the key to handling every vulnerable moment that you encounter? Is what you know that will bail you out in the moments of vulnerability. Why would you just choose to walk away? Think about it. Why? You are not just walking away because of who you are. You are walking away because you are persuaded that that's the way to react. Think about it. So, and so the flip is to say, the reason some people get swept off their feet is because they don't know enough about how to handle their situations. So there is the knowledge of the relevant principle. Number 5, do you know that abuses are what results from vulnerabilities that you don't handle well? Notice I said some people they are vulnerable when they are powerful. They are vulnerable when they are powerful. So challenges will be brought to them, provoking them to use their authority when they should not use it. And suddenly what happens? It will be seen as abuse of power. So somebody comes to you to report a subordinate and tries to paint a picture, knowing that, this subordinate does a number of things. Maybe this subordinate is always late and all of that. And the subordinate is always late. And maybe the subordinate may not even be pulling their weight, but you are the boss, you have power. And so a third party who wants to appeal to your weakness can come and paint that subordinate, in a bad picture, because they know how you feel about the subordinate, and they want you to use your power to deal with the subordinate. Can you think about it? Have you used your power before in a way that you know that, that was a bit high-handed? That was quite unnecessary. And that's where we get into trouble, because this is part of the outcomes. This is part of what results. Okay, it will be abuse of power, or abuse of privilege, or abuse of purpose. Is one of those three: power, privilege, purpose. When you watch your vulnerabilities carefully, when you watch and you try to, understand the motivation behind, all right, those who present you with those challenges, you see that this is what they're trying to accomplish. Because when there is abuse, that's what will be associated with you, because that's what your reaction brought about. And when that happens, it undermines your reputation. It undermines your reputation. Okay, that's the way that these things work. Beware of abuses of authority, abuse of position, abuse of service. There are situations where you may have used the official car to run some, family errands, local errands. They have nothing to do with the business. But while you are trying to see what you could do, maybe your driver suggested, Oga, we can use the car now. But it's company car. Oga, forget it, we can use the car, leave that thing. And then you decide to, it's an abuse of privilege. So some of these things can be, at times you get away with it, but when they are going to backfire, you will say, but I have my own cars. Maybe I should have just looked for another form of transportation. I knew that, the policy prohibits me using this thing for my own purpose. Okay, that's how some of these things happen. So please take note of that. Wow, sorry, I skipped a great deal there. All right, I should. Okay, so I talked about principles, talked about abuse. Sorry, just some, I guess now I am dealing with some technicalities at my end. Just a moment, please. Okay, so let's look at outcomes now. Outcomes. Do you know that every vulnerable moment ends in either of two possible outcomes? We talked about that earlier on. it either will be positive or it will be negative. One of the things that you are trying to ensure does not happen is a loss of any kind. It could be a loss of reputation, and I think loss of reputation, most of all, loss of your peace, loss of respect or honor, and it could be loss of income. Imagine how much business Will Smith has lost already. While we're at it, does anybody remember the fight between Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield some years ago? I think many years ago. And Tyson was an acknowledged champion. I mean, he was used to knocking people out in the first round. Okay, but he then encountered this guy. And he was struggling with the guy. He couldn't knock him out in the first round, and he was struggling round after round. And so what happened? Yes, you are right. And then Tyson had to bite off the ear of Evander Holyfield, practically. I mean, what do you think happened? He was vulnerable. He was overwhelmed. This was unlike what he used to handle. Again, look at what happened. It was the world stage, and of course, I mean, that was just like the extreme. Tyson didn't have a very good reputation anyway in terms of behavior, but I mean, nobody expected that. And I'm sure he also didn't expect that. But there are situations that arise that can mess anybody up. All right. When we know that, and we know they would arise, like I said at the beginning, they will arise in your work. They would arise. Some people don't care. All right. Because it happens and it costs them a lot and life just continues. And they still don't do anything about it. But why should you live like that? Why should anybody live like that? Okay. So it's part of, and you can see, if you go back, what it cost him. I mean, we know what happened to Mike Tyson. Just seemed like, from that point, his career just took a nosedive. And you don't want to do that. So you're trying to avoid a loss, but there's always an outcome. There's always an outcome. Why? Because there is what you do. There is a reaction. And that reaction will produce an outcome. And then let me close this subject with the lessons. There is always also a lesson. There is a lesson. There may be more than one lessons, but one lesson I want to leave that you must never overlook is that thing, that vulnerable moment will happen again. It will happen again. It will happen again. And you know what is instructive about something happening to you again? It would be a shame if something happens to you the second time and it floors you again. That means you didn't learn. You didn't learn from your very first encounter. And that would be a shame. But one thing is certain, that your vulnerable moments will happen again. Your vulnerable moments will happen again. And that means, now, this is what you need to do here, is what I said, you need to train yourself. It's a lifestyle issue on what I call the armor of resilience. It's a resilience issue. Resilience is the solution to vulnerability. Is to build the capacity to rise above or to deal effectively when these kinds of situations take place. And it's not something that you want to do as a, kick and jerk kind of, response. It's something that you want to trigger automatically. And the way you do that is if it becomes a lifestyle issue. So you need to train yourself, okay, in a way that you can rise above, you can walk tall in any given situation. Of course, the starting point is your mindset. Your mindset. And when talking about your mindset, is that fundamental determinant of whether you will win or you will lose your vulnerable fights. What's the right mindset? I can handle every challenge that puts my vulnerabilities to test. Can do what is right in such situations and prevent regrettable outcomes. If you don't have that mindset, you are not ready, you are not empowered. Okay? You need to have that mindset. The wrong mindset, sorry, this should be a wrong mindset. The wrong mindset is what we're showing here, is a fearful mindset. And here it is the fear that I might face a challenge that would expose my vulnerabilities, ridicule me, and cause regrettable outcomes, And so what should your change of mindset be like? Let me quickly run through them. You need to understand that and convince yourself that vulnerable moments are normal experiences in the course of life, that they are normal, Remember, I said they're going to come, not once, and they will be repeated. Number two, you can be overwhelmed, humiliated, frustrated, and defeated by any test of your vulnerability if you don't rise above it. If you are not ready, if you are not prepared, something will happen. One of those options will be your lot. Number three, you must also understand these are mindset issues. Your vulnerabilities are not peculiar to you. All right? They are not peculiar to you is not, I'm not contradicting what I said before, that the reason that you face certain challenges is because of who you are, your attributes. All right? I'm saying that there are many people, by the way, that share your attributes. We have seen it even on this platform. And so with many of those people, what you face is what they face. All right? So forget the idea that, you are put in a situation. What happened to Will Smith is not peculiar to him. There are others who have been so provoked, possibly even in more, prominent, at more prominent events, at higher stages, higher levels on the world stage, and they didn't do what he did. All right. So there's nothing that is new about what you are facing. Your inability to overcome them doesn't mean they cannot be overcome. It means that you are not prepared. Your vulnerable moments, number four, present an opportunity to show what you are made of, whether you are really capable, whether we should, depend on you to lead us. And it's vital for your career, because when the chips are down, those are some of the things that management is looking for. Not just about competence. All right, these are some of the things we'll talk about in our office politics masterclass, but you see it. Some people will not, move because they are exhibiting a lack of capacity, all right, in the face of some key vulnerable moments. They are plagued by certain vulnerabilities, and management can see that they have not developed the competence, to handle that. You don't want to put such people in positions of authority. So you see how these things affect, leadership position. Now, the good part, you have what it takes to handle your vulnerable moments appropriately and to win. So the ability is there. It's just that it's latent. You need to develop it into capacity, something that you can use when those things happen, when those situations happen. Number 6, there is what you must do to overcome that challenge. There is always something to do. There is always a way out. There was a way out, you know, for Tyson. He didn't have to bite that guy's ear. There was a way out. He just didn't know it. Or maybe he had gotten too overwhelmed to be able to think through it. Okay? There is always a way out. And finally, these again are mindset issues. You can also endure every test of your vulnerabilities while you are taking action to dominate them. You can. You can. Notice in all that I have said, you need to work at yourself. These things don't fall on you. These things you won't suddenly become, they won't suddenly become a part of you because I have mentioned it here or because you have heard me say that. No, there is work to be done to get yourself in that mode. There's a schooling, there's a training that needs to be done to orientate yourself, you know, so that you can have that mindset. And this is foundation. This is foundation. This is foundation stuff. You must consciously track or watch changes in your vulnerabilities. The things that affected you yesterday may no longer affect you today. More things may have come up. Why? Because you, notice we said you need to understand yourself and you change. You are not static. The same you that we knew 5 years ago, you know, you haven't remained the same. And it's a shame if you don't know that certain changes have taken place. And some of those changes are shaped by your experience. And so you might find that there are new things that you get irritated by. There are new things that you're afraid of. Again, I'm sure you can see that if you are not keeping track of that, then, you know, you are losing ground. You're losing ground. Okay. Again, it's a mindset issue. It's having a clear understanding that this is how this thing works. And then I think I'm going to stop here. You know, you are responsible for and must intentionally develop the capacity to handle your vulnerabilities as you discover them. So there is a responsibility. Again, you must have that mindset. There is work for me to do. It's not enough to know that I'm vulnerable in these areas. It's important that I know that I have to do something if I must be on top of my game when these things happen. And I wanted to note here the difference between ability and capacity. That's something I'd like to talk more about. All right, so I would go to the SALT framework. This may be where, you know, we will bring this to a close. And just to share with you a framework that can help you to address this issue, you know, to begin to reposition yourself. If you are serious about, you know, dealing with this, the issues, this is something that can help. All right. This is not the nitty-gritty solution, but, you know, this is what it is. It gives you an idea of what a leadership resilience, you know, upgrade or development program may look like. It's something that we have to address. It's something you need to work on, I believe. I call it the SALT framework. I call it the SALT framework. Now, please tell me in the chat. I think the class is a bit quiet now. Tell me in the chat, what does SALT convey to you? What does SALT, as we know it, what does it convey to you? What does SALT do? What is useful? I mean, about SALT. What do we use SALT for? I think the women, you know, among us, can school us very well in that area. But let me tell you something, that vulnerability is like yeast, is like leaven. I think the Bible will usually refer to something like this as leaven. But leaven is just yeast. You know, you put yeast in the dough, and it does something. Yeast is very small. You may not even see it. Once it enters the dough, it disappears. You don't see it. You can't pick it out. And you don't need a lot of yeast, all right, to affect a dough. But guess what? When yeast get inside the dough, no aspect of the dough can escape its effect. None. The ladies know what we're talking about. Those who know about baking know. Once you put it, you don't need a teaspoon of dough to affect, you know, a big basin of, I mean, a teaspoon of yeast. But once you put small, it will take control, as it were, of the behavior of the dough. That's what your vulnerability can do to you. It's like a leaven, it's hidden. Many times it's not obvious. It's a latent, I call it a latent bacteria. You know, but it affects your current and future prospects. If you treat it with levity, you will have yourself to blame. None of us should treat our vulnerabilities with levity. It's hidden. I mean, who knew that somebody could slap somebody the way he did? Who knew Mike Tyson? Even they didn't know. At the time he was stepping into the ring, it would be the last thing on their minds. It would be the last thing on their minds. When Will Smith was going with his wife to that event, I mean, he wasn't going thinking that he was going to slap somebody. Okay, you know, but he's always been there. He's always been there. Hidden, unconscious. It takes something to provoke it, you know, and it just takes over the person's personality. So I see salt here is a preservative. Thank you very much. It influences the food. It gives taste. It gives sweetness. All right, you know, sweetness of a particular kind. Yes, is a preservative. Is a preservative. Is sweetness. It gives taste. It influences the food. Is for seasoning and preservation. You're right. Thank you. Preservative, flavor, yes, flavor, and that's what the sweetness was talking about. Salt preserves and seasons. Yes, you're right. Seasoning and preserve is a conditioner. Somebody says it's a conditioner. One can determine its essence. All right, so it's very important. And I'd like you to look at your vulnerability as, you know, a leaven. Okay, as a leaven. When it gets in, it's hidden, it will weaken, it can spoil, and it can destroy. That's the problem. It's serious. Every of those things I've said, you can look at it in the two cases I mentioned. And there are many cases. Some of us have also been involved. If you want to be true to yourself, you know the kind of challenges that can happen. Yes, I agree, sir. Pere, I agree that men also bake. It's not only women. I was just, you know, trying to, I agree completely. I mean, it's not the prerogative of women. It's just that we tend to find more women doing that than we do find men. So great. I mean, but you can relate to the point. Now, the antidote for that is salt. So you look at all the things you have said, and those are things that we need to preserve. You need to preserve your reputation. You need to preserve your identity. You need to preserve the flavor of your life and your leadership, conduct, and stature. You need to preserve honor for yourself, your self-esteem. All right. So there is something that you need to water your personality with that is akin to salt. when you drop salt in it, it will checkmate any leaven, the effect of the leaven in you. All right? It will checkmate it. It will checkmate it. So look at this salt, framework from that perspective. It checkmates. It's also hidden, by the way. It's hidden. The things we're going to tell you that you need to do, they're somewhat hidden. They are played down. You can't hold them with your fingers, but they have massive impact in conditioning you and empowering you to rise above and dominate your areas of responsibility. So it checkmates. This framework strengthens you. All right. One of the things that salt does, the preservative dimension of salt, is that when you put it on, say, meat or so, if you like, drop bacteria on it, it will neutralize the effect of the bacteria. The bacteria won't have the opportunity to take root, because there is a strength that is like a covering, over, the meat, if it's meat that you put it on, that prevents the salt from penetrating. It preserves, that prevents the bacteria from penetrating. It preserves and it projects, all right? Your reputation grows, all right? So you see that the salt framework, is effectively a mitigant against the damaging and debilitating effects of your vulnerability when you look at it as a leaven or as a yeast to your dough now being your very personality or your very person. All right, so what are we talking about when we talk about the SALT framework? There are just 4 elements of it. It's strength, it's awareness, it's learning, and it's thinking. SALT, strength. You need strength. And we're not talking of just physical strength. You need inner strength. It helps you to stand firm at your vulnerable moments. You can only stand firm, strong and tall when you have built the inner strength to withstand the challenges, remember, of your vulnerable moments. Strength. Awareness. Unless you are fully aware of your vulnerabilities, you will be caught unawares almost always. You will be caught unawares. And nobody wants to be caught unawares. You know that when it comes to battle or when it comes to dealing with challenges, one of the things you don't want is a surprise. Why? Surprise weakens your ability to respond. Surprise can undermine strength. So you can be strong, but you still don't want surprise. All right? There are people who are very strong, but they are taken down by just the element of surprise, invoked by people who are very weak relatively. So strength is not enough. There is awareness. Awareness is to mitigate, all right, surprise. All right? Number 4 is to learn. What did I say before? Now, a commitment to learn from every vulnerable moment empowers against future occurrences. When you have vulnerable moments in the past, don't ignore them. When you have them currently, don't ignore them. The ones you would have in the future, don't ignore them. Spend time to learn from them. Failure to learn becomes an issue. Failure to learn becomes an issue. Failure to learn becomes an issue. And notice what I said, the last pillar, when we talked about the 7, was lessons. And I said something there. One lesson you must learn, one lesson, very instructive, is that vulnerable moment is going to happen again. And you don't want it to happen again and it floors you again if you had been flawed the very first time. All right. And the last element is to think. This is where the concept of principles come in. Many times responses in these kinds of circumstances are not, the responses are spontaneous. Spontaneity undermines because it doesn't allow you to think. If people could think a bit more, Will Smith could think a bit more, if Tyson could have thought a bit more, if they had some principles that around which their lives were, or their lifestyle was anchored, they would have prevented the kinds of situations, that undermine them. They would have prevented. So that's the SALT framework. We can go into a lot more detail in that regard, but I need to begin to close. There is the issue of the irony of your vulnerable moments, and the subject at that point is the subject, to emphasize at that point is that issue of, hypocrisy. Somebody mentioned hypocrisy. That's something that, we need to spend a lot of time on. And, just to note it, it plays a great role. Something I'd like to draw your attention to is that one of the reasons that many of us are overtaken by our vulnerable moments is because we're hypocritical. And I say this with, all sense of responsibility, and it's not to, undermine anyone. We're sharing, knowledge, and we're trying to help ourselves. We're trying to help ourselves here. Look, many times we suffer from situations that we have done to others, but when they are done to us, we're vulnerable. We're hypocritical, and that's something that we really need to deal with. That's something that I can assure you, it's a tough call for everyone, because it's not the case that the average person, even on this platform, can look at themselves, and having done a review of yourself, you come to the conclusion that some of your actions are hypocritical. That there are things you say that you don't mean. There are things you want others to do, but you don't do them. There are things you do to others, but when they do the same thing to you, you vibrate. So it's an important area if you want. Now let's look at it. Will Smith. Will Smith is a comedian himself. For many years, his program, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was comedy. You see, that's a comedy program. There is nowhere you meet Will Smith, he's always joking. And he doesn't have a problem joking with others. But suddenly now, your wife, you become the object of the joke, the same jokes that you used to tell about others, and they didn't slap you. But you now are reacting. You are stepping forward to slap somebody for the things that you do yourself. Isn't that hypocrisy? Hypocrisy. If you look at Mike Tyson, it was good when Mike Tyson was beating people in seconds. In 30 seconds, the bout is over. You can't last one round on the average if you go and look at the record of Mike Tyson. But he then met one guy who did not go down in the first round, who didn't go down in the second, who was problematic for him all the way. And then he was overwhelmed, upset, and did the unthinkable. Hypocrisy. So it was okay if you are the one beating everybody, but it's not okay when you meet somebody who can match you. So you see the point. There's a lot more we can do on that. There's a lot more we can say on that. I didn't want to skip that without saying anything. Now I will round this up in 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. There's the aspect of exposure management as one of the ways to manage, to handle your vulnerability, to beef up your capacity, to manage, to stay on top of your game. Exposure management is what you need to do to ensure that you do not expose yourself. We have talked about self-awareness. I have asked, what do you know about yourself? How much of yourself do you know? When you know yourself, it empowers you. It empowers you. It empowers you also against those vulnerable moments. But we don't spend time. We think it's a joke, but it is empowering. Nothing like knowing yourself. Again, it's one of the things that we need to do. And there is so much that, we need to spend time on that. And then, of course, if you do, there's a way to track if you are improving in your capacity to handle situations, all right? I call them lifestyle improvement indicators. If I just highlight them, there are at least 3 key signs that you need to watch out for. One is your reputation. That's supposed to be number 1, sorry, not number 2. 2 is goodwill. I think I've skipped 1. I don't know here. All right, I skipped 1. 1, of course, the first, of course, has to do with knowledge, or if you like, action, informed action, informed action. What do I mean by informed action? Informed action is that, when you have developed a plan of how to handle your vulnerable moments, are you living out that plan? Are you adding action, all right, to whatever strategic way out you may have identified? So there is that informed action. There's your reputation. How do people now see you? What do people observe about the changes taking place, in the way that you live, in the way that you handle situations, and what are they showing you by way of respect? What are they showing you by way of respect? Again, those are things that we can, talk about. All right, so what you need is resilience. You need to build up your resilience. You need to build up your resilience. So that's it for leading when vulnerable. For leading when vulnerable. Remember what I said. Remember the messages. Your leadership is not credible, may not be guaranteed if you have not been tested. if your vulnerabilities have not been tested. And the test of the quality of your leadership is what are the outcomes when you are vulnerable. Okay, are you able to rise above them and stand on top of your game? You're in control, you're firm, you dominate. All right, and things don't take you unawares. Make no mistake, when you can get yourself in that situation, when you are in that situation, is fantastic. So your technical competence is in place, but the one that matters more than even technical competence, you're also on top of it. That is, you have that resilience as a leader, and you can rein in your vulnerabilities, and remain on top, remain in control at your vulnerable moments. That's it. Now, I have said at a point, you can see that, and this is usually how our programs are, pretty, comprehensive. We try to cover, quite a number of ground, or at least give that, overview, that sense of how critical the subject matter is. But permit me to, for those who are interested, let me recommend to you to join a cohort-based class on a 12-week program, and we've called it a Leadership Resilience Upgrade Program. And that program is going to be focused on helping you to develop the capacity to deal with your vulnerabilities. It's making you more resilient as a leadership. So it has impact on your leadership, and you see all the things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about them in greater detail. There's something that I refer to as the armor of, resilience. And we'll be walking through that. We'll walk through in detail the SALT framework I just gave, an overview. You need to know what elements constitute, that strength. What are the sources of the strength? How do I lay hold on the sources of strength? How do I build that inner strength? You need to know, how do I get to understand myself? Yes, we talked about awareness, but how do I understand myself? How do I locate the who, in me, the 20% of my attributes that explain 80% of who I am? You need to have that understanding. All right. What lessons? How do you learn from your experiences? There's a way to learn from them, to pick out the vital lessons, because until you learn from them, you can't stay on top of them. Okay. You can't stay on top of them. And also what we said about thinking. What are the principles? There are certain core principles that you need to understand. When you have an understanding of those principles, you fortify your ability to respond when you are vulnerable. We talked about that. Now that program is also going to talk about hypocrisy. I saw somebody who said, God deliver me. Well, he posted, he was, and I like it. Thank you very much, sir, for just throwing it out there. This is why this is the kind of forum you want to do that. God deliver me from hypocrisy. It's a serious issue. Many of us, we think that others are hypocrites. We don't know that, we have issues ourselves. We will drill down. And some people don't even understand what hypocrisy means. Hypocrisy is not just somebody saying something and he doesn't do it. That's only a part of it, is 1/10 of it. You want to understand what true hypocrisy is, you'll be shocked. There's a section that I called Haunted by Hypocrisy. You'll be shocked at the dimensions of hypocrisy. If you understood it, many of us, that segment alone will be life transforming. And those are the things that we're going to be dealing with in that program. For 12 weeks, it's going to be, it won't be too demanding on you, so don't be afraid if you're interested. It's going to be one live session with me every week. We'll be covering something every week. But of course, there will be, I'm looking first for, a class of not more than 10, at the most 11, because we're going to be learning from each other. It's usually good when you just have that kind of small class, and all of us can interact and drill down. So there will be group sessions where the group will basically work together. There will be assignments where you just will prompt you to begin to look at yourself, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is so that you can bring up a plan that helps you, that you can work with. You see, we talked about that lifestyle, so that you can begin to characterize, that lifestyle, that helps you to stay on top and avoid the kinds of, examples that we have used over the course of this of this session. That's what it is going to be transformative. You can't come through it and remain the same. If this has added value to you in any way, what I'm hoping is that you would see how crucial that issue of vulnerability is. We shouldn't wait until a Mike Tyson situation. It may not be at their stage, but each of us have to grapple with those kinds of exposures. And it would be a shame if after all that you have worked for so many years, one is caught up with something like that. So please, if you are interested and you want to be a part of it, the session, by the way, will start. The session will start in May. I think it will start about the middle of May, and then we'll run for 12 weeks. I'm sure it's something that you'll be able to accommodate in your schedule. It will be great having you in class. For some of us who may not be sure, you can reach out to me. You can book. I will send an email out. I hope we have the email of everyone who has joined us this evening. I will send an email if you want to book a call with me. You can book a call with me. We can run through 30 minutes of discussion and get a feel, and you get a feel for whether or not that kind of program is for you. We can do something like a vulnerability review interview, so where I'll be able to answer a few questions about where you are, the things you should be concerned about, the kind of training that I think you need, so that you can decide to do the needful. This is something that will help you, whether you're running your own business or you're on a career path, and quite frankly, as you can see, if you have gained something over the last 2 hours, it means that there is something of value, because 2 hours are not enough to put all that we need to to get across on the table. But I think that we've had some time, and I hope that it's been a worthwhile time for your good self. So once again, I'd like to appreciate all of us who have taken the time to join us this evening. Please extend, if you want me to reach out to you as well, you can put your you can put your email, you can put your phone. Anyhow, I'll try and reach out to you, and then you would have the details. I look forward to seeing some of you join us, if not all. I'm hoping that every one of you can make out time so that you can be part of our next cohort of 10 or 12 at the maximum, and let's have a good time, a great time together, building, upgrading our resilience and our capacity to lead. All right, so there you are. I thank you all for your comments. Now, I know that to all intents and purposes, the session has ended. But if you do have any questions, this is a good time for you to raise any, questions or to make any comments or any contributions that you may want to make. So the floor is open if you want to say something. For those who want to leave, please feel free. But if you still like to stay with us, to listen to the questions or to ask a question, you are free. I'm still here. But I think that in terms of what we promised to deliver today, I think we've tried to deliver. And if you have benefited, please put in a word about EMET leadership. This is what we do. We're all about building leadership capacity. And I think that our sessions speak for themselves. If you've gained something, please put in the word to your colleagues. By the way, this session is going to hold again. There's going to be another run of pretty much the same thing, same time next week, Saturday. So if you are still interested, you can try. We would give you an opportunity to be a part of that, as well. It seems to me that, okay, Mr. Akiode, that there is a divine side to all of this. Certainly there is a divine side. I mean, what we teach at EMET is not just a simple theory. It is what is tested. If you want to attend a divine side presentation, be on the lookout. So you can see for you, if you want to see scriptural backing for some of the things you have taught, we will show you, that there's a backing for it. We're not just talking about, some pie in the sky, So yes, I mean, yes. Okay, some people saying the devil made him do something, Mike Tyson and all of that. Fine. Whatever is the cause, of your misbehavior, what we are saying is that you need to deal with it because it can be dealt with. It can be dealt with. It can be dealt with. All right. Thanks for those who have left. So if you, like I said, if you do, have any questions, please, this is a time, let it not be that you didn't have the opportunity to speak. So if you may just want to make a remark or such, you can just raise your hand. I would recognize you and you can have a few words just before I close, finally. All right, do we have anybody who wants to say anything? Or who would like to ask a question? All right, do I sense that somebody, okay, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Bola Shodipo, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Okay. Good evening, sir, and thank you for a well-delivered paper. My question is just bordering on the availability of these slides. Is it possible that you will share to the emails of the people that have attended this session, please?
All right, we will bend backwards to do that. Even though it's a free session, I thought that would have been good enough. But no problem at all. We will share that with you. Expect that, maybe sometime before the close of business on Tuesday. If you have attended, you would find a link to the presentation and possibly to the video as well in your email. All right. Please just also, I think it's useful, for you to, as they say, whitelist our email, so that every time you get emails from us, it will drop directly in your box. Because for some people, they ask and we do that and they just don't locate it, maybe because of some of the restrictions of Google and what have you. So be on the lookout for it. We would oblige you. Just note that when we do send them, it's for your own personal use. We trust that our participants will respect intellectual property and will not just distribute it to anybody. So, yes,
Okay.
to your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for that. It's a gesture, and we will not break the trust. But let me reassure you that even if they break the trust, and all they do is just to re-share it to people,
yes,
in that indirectly, all they are doing is to let people know about Ahmed. I do not think any right-thinking person, executive powered person, will see this and not come back to you for more solutions to some other problems, if not for this, even if they think they have the solutions to these particular issues of vulnerability. There will be other things plaguing them in the place of organization, in families, in churches, everywhere. So, I mean, a candle has no hidden place. You are a goldfish with, I'm just saying, I saw it by happenstance on my email. I don't even know I got the email.
Okay.
Well, and I joined in with a pseudonym. I had in the process, needed to go back to my real names and want to be identified with this kind of organization. Your demeanor, your body language, you are easy on the eyes to see, use of words. A lot of things happened that they all come together to say, this is a class that I will benefit from now and in the future. So, I mean, that shouldn't be a thing of concern to you. Let them put it out to everywhere. Let them share it to anyone. It will advertise you, sir.
Thank you very much. I thank you very much for your kind words, sir. I agree with you. I mean, when the chips are down, I agree with you. I agree with you. You couldn't have put it, I mean, any better. So you would get it, and that's fine.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. All right.
Appreciate you. God bless you, sir.
God bless you, sir. God bless you, sir. All right. Do we have any more contributions? So, well, we appreciate Bola Shodipo. Thank you. Permit me, I don't know whether it's Doctor or Mr., but whatever it is.
I was named Bola Shodipo, sir. every other thing I would have been dashed. So it's so well, so good, sir.
You would have been dashed, or you would have worked for them.
Yes, I wouldn't have handed them on my own. If I hand them, I'll put them there.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so you can follow in his steps. You may still have a word or two so that we can bring the class to a close. If I crave your indulgence, we'll just draw the line maybe by 8:30. All right, I see Victor Balogun. Please go ahead. You can unmute your mic, sir, and talk to the class.
Wow, thank you so much. To me, this is more or less a preaching engagement, so to say, and being an eye-opener in several fronts. My question is very simple, sir.
Yes, sir.
Your presentation is more or less a hands-on experience, very practical. So I want to ask, how were you able to garner this kind of experience? How long will you take you? Because it's not theoretical, it's something that one can easily relate to. So that's just my question, sir.
That's a. I didn't expect that kind of question. All right. I guess perhaps because I didn't, maybe I ought to have provided some background, about myself. Well, I've been around for a bit. I did teach, for many years, Lagos Business School. I still teach at the Business School Netherlands. I was in the banking for 22 years. went on to do my private, stuff, covering real estate, and then did some, turnaround work in a petroleum marketing firm before getting out again and deciding to just focus on leadership. I've been involved both in the secular and also in the church. I still currently, chair a stockbroking firm. I've chaired it for about 10 years now. So, I do a number of things here and there. I think over the years, with 30 years plus under your belt doing some of those activities, you get to see, a number of things. But again, I write books. I write mostly Christian books. I've written more recently on leadership as I begin to focus on leadership. That there's a reason that the tagline for Emed Leadership Academy is leadership nurtured by truth. Leadership nurtured by truth. So that tells you the perspective from which we, look at leadership. I don't teach what I cannot ground on the word of God, for example. I teach even if I have experience, my experience has to line up. If it's contrary to the word, what it tells me is that it's not sustainable. I can't sell that to you. I can only sell, what I know will stand the test of time. There are a lot of things I have learned over the years myself, and I know they do not work. And I know some things that work. So a lot of that, just to give you some bit of insight into, what I've done. I've written 59 books. The last of them was, I think was about 2 months ago. I'm currently working on 2 books right now. Well, did I say 2? Maybe 3, but they're all on leadership, really. There's one that is called Leading from a Vantage Point. There's one, by the way, that is called Vulnerable. It's just called Vulnerable. And I think there's a third one. I can't immediately, remember that topic now. So again, when you're involved with a number of these activities, it gives you a lot of insight. And I write my books under inspiration, and the same thing with these with our sessions. I'm inspired to run a session along certain lines, and when that comes, one of the things I find also is that a lot of the insights that one has come together. All right, and one is able to tell a story. I always tell people that, yes, my experience is there, but I'm a student of everything I teach, meaning that as I'm teaching, I'm also learning, so, and that's helped a great deal. From this session, I've learned, imagine all the things that all of you have been kind enough to express. They have given me, added perspectives. If you were present, if you were to make the next session, I guarantee you that there are things I'm going to say at the next session that will be a little different from the things that you have had today. All right. And that's to show you that, there are a couple of things I'm also taking away from what a number of us have expressed. And I'm grateful for the participation. Somebody is asking for the topics of my books. I will send you, as part of the email communication, I'll send you some links so that you get to know where you can get them. Some, I guess, for the most part, they're ebooks, but you can also, for those who are in locations where that are Amazon friendly, in which case you can order and it's easy to have it delivered. Unlike, for most of us in Nigeria, you can also order for hard copies if you do so wish. All right. So that's it. I hope that's helpful, to you. Once again, thank you for asking that question. I didn't think that a question like that would come, but thank you, all the same. Thank you. All right, I think it's probably is a good time for us to draw the curtain. All that's left for me again is to say thank you very much, and to say I look forward, to you joining that cohort, and let's take things, to a deeper level, and let's empower ourselves. I hope that you can see that, and that you are convinced enough, to make yourself a part of it. Once again, it's going to start by middle of May by the grace of God, and it will run for 12 weeks. And I promise you 12 weeks will be a great time. If it's not, ask me to write your check, and we'll refund to you. All right. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and weekend, and God bless each one of us.